Hi, everyone. We're going to go ahead and get started for our panel on tracking your body's signals for better health. I'm Pam Nisovich-Bede. I am a registered sports dietitian, a 29-time marathon finisher, an author, and the head of nutrition for Abbott's Lingo business. And thanks to steady glucose and enough caffeine, which we all know improves performance, I will be moderating this panel today. So I'm excited to be here to talk about health technology and specifically how continuous glucose monitors are really changing the way we're looking at health and the way we're looking at personalized health. Continuous glucose monitors are really helping us understand what goes on behind the scenes in our own body. And if you're not familiar with CGMs, basically what they are is a biosensor that sits on the back of your arm. It measures glucose 24/7, minute by minute, and it streams a wealth of information to a smartphone app like Lingo, where it's translated, and it gives you personalized insights into what's really happening in your own body. And with those insights, you're coached to make changes to diet, to lifestyle, to the way you're exercising, with the main goal being optimizing health and wellness. We've had continuous glucose monitors for over a decade, brought to you by Abbott, which is really the leader in the most accurate way of sensing glucose in the body. Because at Abbott, we're always searching for ways to really help people live healthier and fuller lives. Today, I think we can all agree that we're really living in this world of sick care, right? Think about when you went to the doctor last. Maybe it was for what I call a well check, but you were probably reacting to something that went wrong, right? And we all know family members, friends, colleagues that are constantly addressing this world of sick care, right? But at Abbott, we're passionate about pivoting to this world where we're optimizing in a proactive manner, a world of really health care. We've got wearables that help us with this health care, right? We've got data inundating our lives, whether it's how many steps we took, how did we sleep the day before, a lot of surface level data that we've all experienced, right? And it evolves over time. I often think through some of the wearables I had, 10 years ago, a very large GPS unit and a huge watch on my arm, right, to help me understand heart rate and distance and things like that, right? So technology it's evolved, and there's more data than ever coming our way. But what we do with this data is really, really important. So at Lingo, we're passionate about helping translate that data in a way that's meaningful, in a way that we can put to work to empower ourselves to improve our health and our wellness. And that's really why we were inspired to create Lingo, to empower everyone to have their own data in the palm of their hand in a way that was meaningful, in a way that was translated, that we could then have habit changes that we could stick with in a way that worked for our own health and wellness. And why does it matter, right? I get that question as a dietitian. Why does glucose even matter? If you're not familiar with glucose, it is one of the main energy sources in our body, and there's a lot of glucose ebb and flow throughout the day, and you can see that on the Lingo graph, Lingo app. The ebb and flow of glucose is pretty normal, right? But it's this glucose roller coaster ride that we are often on. The glucose spikes and the crashes that we can actually feel, right? So if you've ever had that day where you ate something or you did something and you're just feeling off, your mood is impacted, your sleep, your focus, your hunger is impacted. Many times that's glucose behind the scenes, glucose being on that roller coaster ride. So we're passionate about helping users understand their own data, but finding a way to stay steady. And we're going to discuss your experience with health tech, with Lingo, with glucose across this panel. And so with that being said, I'm going to give everyone an introduction to our esteemed panel. And I always find that the best way to do that is to introduce yourself. So Alexis, we're going to start with you. A short bio of who you are and why health tech really matters to you.
I am Alexis Ohanian, probably best known as co-founder of Reddit, and over the last 4 years been building out a VC fund called 776 and really focusing my time on investing in the next generation of amazing technologies and doing my best to be a business dad as well to two young girls. And that really was the impetus for me to start taking it much, much more seriously. That is my health. And it just dawned on me, I spend so much of my work life optimizing for, DAUs and retention rates in building these technology companies that I ought to be doing it for myself. And especially because I got a couple of young kids on the line that I need to have me at my best. So that really started a few years back, and it's been awesome because I do remember taking the pitches for some of those early wearables 10, 15 years ago, and it's great to see the breakthroughs we've started seeing now in the last few years for just really great user experience. That's the thing that ends up winning in the long run. So that's why I'm here.
Awesome. Thank you.
Hi, is it still morning or is it afternoon now? I think it's morning. It's morning. We'll go with that. Good morning, everybody. My name is Tunde. I'm a Peloton instructor, Nike athlete, best-selling author of the book Speak. I like to say best-selling author. I work so hard for that title. When I go to Starbucks, I say I'm Tunde, best-selling author, and motivational speaker. I was really drawn to this conversation and this dialogue just because it impacts my overall performance as an athlete, and even more so the people that I train every single day.
Awesome. My name's Adam Goodkoff. I'm an emergency medicine physician, board-certified in emergency medicine, and also the co-founder and CEO of Medfluencers. We're a healthcare influencer marketing agency. So I have been in the kind of content creation, digital healthcare space for the past 8+ years, making content myself, over 2 million followers across platform, and have a pretty deep passion for tech and how that intersects with healthcare, and have had the pleasure of working with Abbott for a few years now on some of the innovative things that they've been working on and across the industry. So excited to be here.
Thank you. And we are all excited that you guys are here too. We're going to talk health tech, we're going to talk lingo, and exciting news, for attending the panel today, you're all going to go home with a promo code for lingo too. So think through these insights that we're going to share, and then think through, across your experience with lingo, how you're going to bring this to life as well. So when you guys started with, thinking through health tech and CGM, I'm really curious, did you know about CGMs before you tried one? Were you curious? What were your thoughts on glucose before you really kind of applied a biosensor and experienced it for yourself?
I mean, I wouldn't want a journalist to quote it, but I had thought many times, could I write myself a diabetic CGM or get someone to write one? Because I've always been fascinated. We were talking earlier, I wear a Whoop relatively frequently. I've tried Aura. I like these wearable products to get insights on the body. And the question to me was, what is the effect on glucose? Because we don't have that continuous feedback loop level data. And we've had it in type 1 diabetics for a long time. We actually, again, we're talking earlier of some of the resistance when that first came out. But we've seen in the healthcare lens how transformative that technology can be. And so the question, I never did it for the record, but was, if I could get my hands on one, what does it look like for a non-diabetic? And so when I heard, Lingo was coming out and we had this opportunity, it was, something that was very interesting to me. So obviously as an HCP, I had heard of glucose monitors, continuous glucose monitors, but never for the general public.
That's a good point. So for a long time, we've had continuous glucose monitors in different populations, and this is one of the first times we have it over the counter, making kind of this data more accessible and more empowering for more individuals. So that's a good point. Tunde, what about you?
As it relates to a diabetic, yes. As it relates to the general public, no. Nor did I know that it mattered. Because I'm not a diabetic, I didn't know that it mattered to know my levels and my stats and what that information could do for me and how it could benefit me.
Very nice. Alexis?
I actually had a childhood friend who had, type 1 is childhood diabetes. So he had type 1 diabetes, and I remember that being a part of his life, that is, measuring his blood sugar levels. But it was the old school. I mean, I'm 41, so he'd prick himself, put it on the strip. It was it seemed like a pretty inelegant solution. And I remember when he got the Tamagotchi, as we called it, that would do the real-time monitoring for him, and he could just check this thing, and it would even pump in the right amount of insulin. And I was like, oh, that's cool. With technology, it seems like a better user experience for you than those strips. But similarly, I had never even considered the health benefits for someone who was not diabetic, and it just feels, in this age of sort of life maximizing that we're in right now, where more and more people are interested in, if you're Brian Johnson, it's living forever. But I think more generally, more and more people are more interested in understanding their bodies and finding ways to live healthier, better lives. The timing for something like this, for the general pop to not need, a script is now.
Yeah, what's interesting to me as a healthcare professional is I started my career in type 1, right? So we were in this kind of an environment of finger prick, or when you work with pregnant women who are concerned about their glucose, you've got finger pricks, you've got a snapshot in time, right? But when you wear a continuous glucose monitor, whoever you are, you see kind of that glucose is really sometimes on a wild ride throughout the day, but there's so much movement across the day. But now we're at a point where we're pulling together more data for all of us, right? Because the data in all populations is very compelling as far as what glucose does, what does it mean for our health, our wellness, our mood. So whatever your goal is, like glucose is really going to be a factor that can impact that goal. So when each of you tried Lingo CGM for the first time, what was your goal? Was kind of health optimization? Was it performance? Where were you at?
I can take that one again. I think
We're
it
gonna
comes
go down the line.
Yeah, that
ready.
works. That works. I think it's both, right? There's an element of I want to be a healthy, a holistic, person. There's an element of medical curiosity, and then there's me as a business person wanting to optimize my brain every day and be, get the most out of every day. Clinical practice, of course, yes, but that's something you practice for years. It's almost rote memory at this point, but business is something where you're sharp. You're trying to innovate every day and lead a company and find out what initiatives really matter. What you eat matters, right? When you work out, we work on all of these other things, and to me, there was this concept of, well, I want to eat healthy. What is eating healthy? And we know that there's so much personalized nutrition and how someone works out is personalized for what works for them. So the question to me was, what does eating healthy actually look like? What does my glucose look like there, and can I start to draw connections to how I'm feeling versus what I'm seeing? And that's always my take home, non-scientifically, when I look at these other wearables. I mentioned, something like Whoop at the beginning that's great. There's lots of data, but does this have any relation to what I'm feeling? And that typically is how I, will dive deeper into a product. So if something is aligning with what I'm seeing and feeling, then I get more interested and I dive deeper in. And so the first time that I put on Lingo, is surprisingly well correlated to what I was feeling. We talked about this earlier. I got in late last night, didn't have the best snack right before bed. I slept terribly, and my Whoop represented that, and I woke up and I didn't feel the same rested that I would. And it's those cues that when I go to make that next health choice, just as a person, forget the physician side, but as a person, I think to myself, maybe I won't have that slice of pizza at midnight. I probably don't need it,
Closing the kitchen early is important. You can talk about that later. Yeah, go ahead, Tunde.
As I mentioned, I got into it, or I was first interested because of the performance aspect. I started using Lingo, I think 5 months ago, just before running the Chicago Marathon. And I wanted to know I'd ran New York the year before, had fun until it wasn't. I had almost a fatal finish. Crawled myself across the last 3 miles. And so going into the Chicago Marathon, I wanted to learn how to properly fuel myself, not just during the race, but in my training and knowing how to make myself stronger leading up to the race day. And for example, I went from fueling myself every 4.5 miles a marathon to knowing that my body reacted better if I fueled myself every 30 minutes. And so I made it more time-based. Knowing the difference in having one piece of toast before I went for a long run and having 2 pieces of toast. Knowing the difference of adding honey and banana to a piece of toast and what that did for me. I think the biggest difference in terms of training for me was knowing the importance of protein. Like, protein's such a big word, it's what everyone's talking about. But specifically knowing the importance of protein at breakfast and going from fueling myself 26 to 34 grams of protein, which I thought was great, to now fueling with 50 grams of protein at breakfast, and knowing not only do I see less spikes throughout the day in my sugar, but also seeing the difference in how I feel sustained. It's one thing to say, okay, I think I felt more full today, or I feel like I fueled myself better today, and then actually looking at the data, and the data says, no, Tunde, you did better today. So I got into it, again, for that performance aspect, but then Thanksgiving kind of happened, and the sugary croissants at Christmas kind of happened, and being 39, I know that the things that I did to, I'll say, drop the holiday weight, if you will. The things that I did in my early 30s and in my 20s, those things don't work anymore. And now being able to look at a graph and have better knowledge of what's going on inside my body, it gives me more control, especially, again, being 39, feeling different in my body, and having tangible, yes, this works for you. Don't eat chocolate right before bed because you're going to sleep really, really bad, and then it's going to affect you tomorrow. But being able to see it versus just know these things has been helpful.
Yeah, I can't underscore enough the real-time nature of it, the difference that it made to help me understand the trade-offs I was making with every meal. And for me, it's just performance optimization, not doing anything terribly athletic outside of my daily, try to stay healthy exercise routine. It's excellence at work, and then, again, trying to chase around a couple of young children. And even realizing, just to understand the dynamic of how my body reacts to having the pancakes versus having the pancakes with some adjacent protein, ideally with the protein first. Stuff that, I'm sitting here trying to teach my kids, all right, let's look at a meal. Let's think about having some carbs, having some veggies, having some protein. Let's think about the relationship of all these things. But I'm learning stuff now thanks to having that real-time data, in my face, seeing that, oh, you're making bad decisions right now. Don't do that.
Yeah, it is.
That's just, for me, it was necessary.
And actually, we had a unique look at kind of how you personally, use lingo and what that looked like kind of on your phone when we chatted with you and your wife, and kind of how what that kind of video looks like.
Are you going to put me on blast now with the
I'm just
real video?
kind of getting
with the video?
you ready for that. We're all going to.
Oh, there it is.
So this is a lingo spike session that we did, and it was really, I don't want to say revealing, but it was very, yes. So.
You said I love you first. This feels like the Newlywed Show.
I remember. Come on now. You gonna lie on this?
I said I'll be honest.
That's not the honest answer. I still remember that phone call. Well, I felt the same way, but you definitely said it first.
My glucose was high.
It's tequila.
I had some gelato and my glucose was too high.
that was
Next
it.
thing I know, I'm calling this guy and I'm saying things I wouldn't normally say. I love you.
Well, I am now at 130.
Whoa.
Lingo just suggested I take a break and do 15 squats.
Lingo don't play.
Very humbling. No, Lingo's really lit. Lingo's got some attitude. We already knew that I was not the professional athlete in the family, but it was so interesting. I peaked in high school. It was a great class of 2001 varsity football, let me tell you. But realistically, you also, we could see firsthand the difference of what a lifetime of health and wellness optimization can produce. Because every body is different for sure. But just to see the difference, we could literally be eating the exact same meal and my body reacts in a very different way than hers. And it just further reinforces what, significant lifestyle changes can do for you. You all don't have to be the greatest athlete of all time. But it reinforces this thing that we all, I guess, would normally take for granted. But when you see that chart spike and you look over and you're like, what the hell? We're literally doing the same thing and my app is telling me to go do some squats.
Just gets to sit there.
You're getting the compounding effect of a lifetime invested in your health. And I'm paying the price for my 20s and 30s.
Right. But a lot of that is it's behavior change, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm curious, with your own data in the palm of your hand, what habits did you change, or what kind of insights that you're like, I'm really going to think through food timing or food order or, whatever, what worked best for you?
Do you want me to go first?
Yeah.
It's such a
You're
good
kind of
vibe.
on,
reverse.
Kind of on up.
Okay, I'll give you that. I'm spiking.
Yeah.
The biggest one, you talked about closing the kitchen early. I've thought more. I used to not eat breakfast, and I would optimize for really just a black coffee, and so now I'm protein loading at the start of my day, which I found really helps give me a base for the rest of it. And then dinner at our house is 6 o'clock every night. That's my promise to the fam. I'm always home at the table. We're having dinner, and that kitchen is closed at 6:30. Right? I'm not putting any more food in my body aside from water, and I do chicory now. I'm addicted to coffee, and so I wiped out the caffeine with chicory. It's a good substitute. It doesn't quite taste the same, but it gets the job done. and there's no more eating. And then I saw firsthand the benefit that it made on how I slept, to your point earlier, and how I felt, and just trying to build rituals and habits. But as someone who has looked at charts, like I said, normally like DAU numbers or retention numbers for his entire career, being able to see that same real-time data for myself and blood sugar levels, it was world-changing, because it helped me realize, like, why haven't I been taking this seriously? And then making those lifestyle changes just got a lot easier, because you can't argue with the data. It's just facts over feelings. Like, I got to make changes.
Right, when you wake up foggy the next morning, but then you see the data and you're like, well, I was spiking all night long, right? And so what the data shows us is when you kind of eat earlier, you give your body time to digest, kind of time to level set, return to baseline, and then go into that sleep. It's a much better sleep.
And okay, bonus too on the flip side, because look, there's still business trips. I still have the like late night Korean barbecue, right? Okay, and then you get but you get the fun surprise and delight. Because then I will still have these nights where I'm making actually good choices, because I'm not having alcohol, I'm having meals that are pretty heavy in the protein, and I actually am like, oh, like that night actually worked out pretty well for me. Like I'm actually, I can still break the ritual, and if I'm making good choices doing it, not having the late night pizza, then I'm trying to just build better habits even when those routines break.
I like that. You're kind of hinting on those aha moments, those what I learned from lingo that I wouldn't have otherwise. Tunde, where did you have any of those experiences on like kind of the aha, like I didn't realize my body responded in this manner?
Yeah, I'll say it's been taking ownership, like, going and have a drink. I like to have a good report card, and so if I see a spike, if I'm going out with friends the next night, I'm thinking I want a really good report card tomorrow, and so I'm not going to drink. I mean, sometimes I get a bad report card, just,
Oh, yeah.
but
That happens to all of us.
I shoot for an A+. But Alexis said it really has been just breakfast in general. So I wake up, now I drink water, 2 cups of water. At first, I noticed what coffee did to me when I started with coffee, and so I did water, and I'd wait an hour on a good day to have coffee. And then I realized the difference, and even switching from coffee to matcha worked for me. And so I do water, I wait 30, 60 minutes if I can. I do my matcha, and then if I'm not a pancakes for breakfast person, but let's say I do a smoothie or fruits. The importance of having the protein before the fruit. And I'm a sopper. I don't know if that's the English definition, but when you take some of this and take some of that and put it all on the fork at the same time, that's how I typically eat. I've realized that now if I just eat my eggs on their own and then go into the sweet potato or go into the fruit, I see less spikes on my report card.
And that makes sense, because when we think through protein and fat and fiber, these nutrients work in different ways to slow down digestion, right? So when you have that kind of front loading of the meal, you have your protein first. We always say prioritize protein, fueling with healthy fats, going green. Those nutrients that many of us don't get enough of throughout the day anyway, when we start the meal with that, we slow down digestion. And so you can have the same nutrition on board, right? It's kind of like you can have your cake and eat it too, but because you're slowing digestion, you get those same nutrients, but kind of in a steadier manner. So that makes sense that works.
Well, you said it. You can have your cake and eat it too. So if I am going to have my pancakes, I tell myself have the pancakes, but absolutely, definitely make sure that you have protein with the pancakes.
Yes, agreed.
Yeah, it's been similar for me. I don't have a ton of uniqueness to add, and it's funny, we're all kind of getting the similar, I guess, changes out. One of the big ones, I hate leading with it because, it's a hot button topic, but is alcohol. It's very easy to go out and have a drink or 2 drinks. You go on a business dinner, whatever it might be. That's a different decision that I'm making now. Very often I'm saying, no thanks, I'll have, soda water or whatever it is, or just a plain, regular water, because I want that good report card. Because I don't want, I was good all day. I was watching how I'm eating and what my glucose is doing. And, it's easy to let your guard down and, have an old fashioned. All of a sudden you're like, oh my God, like all night, lingo count is out of control. And then you compound that by eating a carbohydrate. You go to a steakhouse and you have some fries or something like that. And then the alcohol is being broken down. And then later you're getting to that carbohydrate. You're having spikes all night. Talk about the sleep quality there. So, for me, it was awareness around alcohol and the impact that has. And then specifically how sensitive I am to carbohydrates and the difference between, I guess, like complex carbs, things like sweet potatoes, like you mentioned, and then, eating toast, eating fries, eating pasta. I mean, pasta is something that I almost entirely stay away from at this point because for whatever reason, my body just reacts very strongly to pasta, and prioritizing protein first has been huge. The order of the food, I think, is something that I didn't expect coming into matter that dramatically affects, at least for my glucose personally. If I have, to the point of breakfast, right? I have a piece of toast and some eggs and my coffee, and if I eat the toast and then the eggs, I'm going to see a spike. Yeah. But if I eat the eggs and I have some coffee and then I eat the toast, it's almost totally level.
I think the gift of lingo is some of what we're saying is new. And then so much of what we're saying, it's what alcohol does to your body. You know what heavy pasta does to your body. But to tangibly see it on your phone in real time, I think is what makes the world a difference.
I agree. I'm curious, or go ahead.
If I could jump on that real fast from a healthcare lens, that is what I think is really interesting about a product like this. When you eat McDonald's that it is not good for your health. But it's not until you go to the doctor and you get your cholesterol checked that you're like, oh, I need to make better health choices, right? So this is that immediate feedback where you're constantly being told, that was the wrong choice for me, right? I need to make better choices so that when I go in my 6-month checkup and I'm having these numbers that are so surprising, it's not a surprise, right? We knew that was happening because we weren't doing what we needed to do every day. And it's almost like that constant checkup, that little like internal coach to be like, you can do better every day.
Yep. And I think sometimes it's having that data because we have a lot of general nutrition advice, right? Sometimes when I think through like what we recommend for lingo, what the science is now saying is very different than we were trained as HCPs, right? And we think we're doing the right thing, but it's not the right thing for us, right? My personal, metabolism and health, et cetera. So having that data and knowing like, I do better with sweet potatoes and I am with you on the pasta, right? Like it's just not working for me anymore. It's very helpful. Tunde, when you think through data, and I'm going to continue on this pasta here. When you think through like carb loading for Chicago or your carbs intake before a workout and thinking through just your general, your lingo data, knowing in the background, how do you fuel? How did you learn to fuel for performance? What changed?
Maybe it's the way, I think what stands out the most is the way that I fuel for cardiovascular, like cardio, versus strength training. With cardio, cortisol is going to peak, stress levels peak, and so I can see just from the stress of it alone. I think we were chatting backstage talking about like when you have turbulence on a plane, you look at your report card, you're like, oh my God, it's going up. Same thing with cardio, and so knowing that I need more fat before cardio and a little bit more of a carby meal before strength training has been, and it's like I knew that. I teach that. I'm a coach. I read it in a book and they told me to tell people. But then seeing my report card, it makes what I was taught and told real.
And then on that report card, do you check in? Like I always look at my data and then I check in with myself of like, my data said this, and that is how I felt, but I wouldn't have known it otherwise. Like, what does that feel like internally where you're
It's ownership. Like you know, like again, like if you're having the pizza before bed and you wake up and you say, oh God, I really feel like today, like I don't feel good today. And then you look at your chart and then you think about what you put into your body. Yes, you might not feel good throughout the rest of that day or until the afternoon, but there is power in knowing why. Like, you're looking at somebody, I don't know why I feel good. I don't know why I don't feel good. I slept okay. And then, like, actually having okay, this is why I don't feel good. And there's ownership in that, and there's power in that. And honestly, just knowing sometimes kind of does mentally help you to get there and feel better. Yeah, I don't know if that answers your question.
It does. And then when you're a coach, you're an instructor, like, does that change how you're advising people? Like, here's how you should fuel before Peloton. Like, what does that look like in your industry?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a nutritionist like you, but yeah, absolutely. The recommendations that I might give to a friend, or if somebody asks me on a one-to-one, like, how should I like to speak to how it's benefited me or what works for me. But, in a dream world, we'd all be walking around with our devices. I don't wear my device every day, but I do take I have it on now, but I do take what I've learned, and I put those practices into my everyday.
Very nice. Yeah. Adam, from your perspective as a healthcare professional, like your own knowledge of the data, how is that changing how, we've talked about how it's changing how you're feeling, how is that changing how you're advising patients?
I think nutrition is a tricky conversation to have as a physician with patients, because it's a very personal journey for everyone. It's a very emotional journey for a lot of folks, the relationship with food. And I think that having the data deconstructs that kind of relationship barrier, the emotional barrier, I should say, of, hey, what you're doing is wrong. You're making bad health choices. You're choosing the wrong thing. And it just says, why don't you just check it out? Just put this on. And this is an option that's out there. You can get some information about what you're eating. And now there's something that we can talk about. And obviously, in the acute care setting in the ER, I'm not having folks follow up and talk about glucose, but it's something that I can say, now you have something that you can take to your primary and have an objective conversation and say, hey, I don't know if I'm making the best health choices. My glucose is spiking all day. It seems like it's high compared to what I see out there. What should we do? And now it's something to actually jumpstart the conversation versus what would have happened a few years ago of, well, why don't you make a food diary? And then you think a primary care physician has time to go through a food diary in this current, the way that we're practicing healthcare. I don't know that that's happening either. I don't practice in primary care, but I doubt that in a 15-minute visit that they have time for that. And so maybe having some objective data like this is going to accelerate that conversation. It's going to get someone pointed in the right direction. And again, it takes that emotional feeling of, you're telling me I'm doing something wrong, and turns it into, here, discover something about what you're doing.
I like that. And then lingo can impact, I think, the patient as a whole. And at some point, we're all a patient. So let's take a look at your data. And then you can kind of run us through like, no, there's no judging here. This is a safe space. But like, tell us what you saw. Tell us how you felt and what you did different.
Yeah, so this was a random scroll from the other day. So you can see I've got a couple workouts based on that time. That was probably, I might have swam and then had a meal that wasn't very carb consistent with the spike there. But you can actually see, which I know, Pam, you've talked about that. It's interesting. You do get a spike sometimes from exercise, and so we can see that. Towards the evening there, I know for a fact I had sushi, and sushi has a lot of rice. And again, I don't do well with the carbs, so could see the impact there. Again, the info on the bottom isn't necessarily lining up, but there is a breakfast. You can see I had my typical eggs toast with a little bit of peanut butter. I don't typically put peanut butter on the toast, but I was kind of messing with it to see what happened, and I had a glucose spike from that. Typically, I just have kind of the toast plain. So it is very much interesting, and then we have my kind of resting glucose, to take a look at your own numbers throughout the day. And there, you had a question behind the question. I want to make sure I get to that. What was the other part of that?
Knowing your own data, I think we chatted about like how you would advise patients as a whole, but what I saw from your data, what's really interesting is like a compare and contrast, right?
Yeah.
We're all our own detective a lot with healthcare, with data, and then seeing like what I did on Monday, and then I ate the same thing, but in this order on Tuesday. Like, did you experience that, kind of all three of you, like the insights that you grabbed from Lingo, what was surprising?
For me personally, it's like I said, like the peanut butter. It's that little change, like something that is. And I guess I'm just like a simple guy. I have the same thing every day for breakfast, so it is the same eggs and the same toast every day. But my fiance wanted peanut butter, and so I was like, sure, we'll put some peanut butter on there, and it's a wildly different outcome. So again, it's the small changes, and it's the order. The order is what continues to like blow my mind, that it is especially so impactful for me, and I force myself now to eat both like leafy greens and things and the protein before I get to the carbohydrate. It has a wildly different impact. I should have captured that on the graph. Could have done it like 2 days in a row and just had the same kind of thing. But I will, if I have, let's say, like I'll throw sweet potatoes in an air fryer, right? And I eat that, and then I eat chicken breast, and then I have broccoli, there's gonna be a spike. There just is for me. But if I have the broccoli and the chicken breast first, and then I have the sweet potato, it's like there's almost no change. Like you won't even know that I had the meal.
Yeah. And then the coaching, I think, throughout is helpful too, right? Because I wouldn't have known that either, right? The whole, like, it's the food order, what you eat first, when do you eat it, et cetera, really does make a difference. Thinking through your respective fields, I'm curious when we get back to health tech like continuous glucose monitors, how do you see that kind of, and Adam, we'll start with you, like how do you see that in kind of the world and the landscape of helping people kind of optimize health and taking that information and for habit change?
Yeah, I think again we're in the age of data right now, which is really great, and we now have machine learning everywhere, and AI is on every sign here, and so there are more and more ways to consume data, and now it's about how do I actually take that and make an impact. And I think in the healthcare space, we're seeing new tests come out. We talked earlier about the TBI test and looking at concussions, and that was something I was very excited about because previously that's something that clinicians would say it doesn't matter. I'm just going to do a head CT, and I won't go down the rabbit hole here, but it's actually really interesting to get a number and say, how hard did you hit your head? How significant is this? Let's get you plugged in with a neurologist. And I think this is, on a consumer lens, much the same, like I said, from tuning your diet and your performance yourself. It's not just, I don't feel well, or my Oura ring says I didn't sleep well, but what actually happened with how I'm fueling my body. There's now this kind of like mantra in medicine. People are saying like, food is medicine. And there's all of these kind of offshoots now of wellness and integrative medicine type of areas that are coming out. But the point is that more folks are paying attention to what we're putting in our bodies. And I think this is the next version of that. It's what excites me, is that the general public is getting interested in their health. We saw that with COVID, with the rise of social media. Folks are coming and following physicians because they want that level of expertise around their own health care.
And then one final question, kind of as we close out this panel. What do you think the future, each of you, what do you think the future looks like for health tech? But what would you like to see it look like? Like, what would you love to see come to life?
I talked about user experience out the gate here, and I have seen in 20 years of building technology products and investing in them at the earliest days, the biggest winners end up nailing user experience. And there's a product version of that, which is literally how the software and hardware works and design, and okay, but at a high level, every one of us can understand a delightful user experience is any product or service you use that is just genuinely a delight to use, that makes your life better without taking a huge mental toll on whatever it is you're trying to get accomplished. And I think we are seeing more data than ever. AI is ostensibly, it is a world-changing technology, but no one is going to adapt a product, no one is going to make a major lifestyle change on just the technology. It has to be the user experience that gets created as a result of it. So even though it was a little unpleasant to be told to go do some wall sits or squats or whatever it was, there is truth and value to having that that notification to tell you hey, take notice, take action, be better, do better. And I think we're gonna enter this age now of user experience where we all aspire to live healthy lives, I think, by and large. But what actually makes us do it, aside from those who have tremendous strength and free will and willpower and discipline, for the rest of us, it requires a great user experience that gives us that aid to be better, to be our best selves. And so I think we're going to continue to see this evolve. Lingo's a great example of it because it comes down to user experience that is easy to use, is delightful to use, and helps you actually improve the outcomes.
Love it. Tunde, what do you think the future looks like for health tech, and what would you like to see?
I'll just say what I'd like. I'd say diversity within the user experience. I am first generation American. I'm Nigerian. I'm also from Houston, Texas. Food is my love language. All the languages that I speak, actually. I was overweight as a kid. My family is superstar athletes, and I was I was in choir, I was picked on, I was made fun of for my weight and the way that I looked. I would have killed for this information. Knowing what I know now and how it could have impacted or benefited me, I say diversity within the user experience and getting this information and technology into underserved communities.
I think there's just continued opportunity for the transformation of healthcare through wearables, through data. And when I look forward even just in the last few years, but what excites me is how quickly can we get more meaningful data and then aggregate that through tech, through solutions that can actually distill down meaningful trends for the individual level, because we are learning that everybody is very different. We've heard that on the panel today. We know that in healthcare. There's all these assays and tests out now in the oncology world because every cancer is different, even among different people. So can we get to the level on wellness data where we are taking all of the things in? Maybe you're wearing an Apple Watch, a Whoop, whatever it is. Now we're pairing that with Lingo data. Maybe you're on a scale that's a smart scale that has additional info. So we're pulling all of that together. Again, I don't see a world where physicians are going to have more time with patients, but can we get to a point where you almost have a passport or a dashboard of your health? It's like, hey, here are the key health metrics. Here's how you're tracking, and this is what we've, off of millions and millions of data points determined drive your health, and pair that with traditional arms of medicine. And that's what I think is exciting, and that's what we're pushing towards.
Yeah, I love the idea of kind of that overlaying of data, like what's going on behind the scenes, but could you give it to me, kind of on a screen. So thank you all. Thank you all for your amazing insights and your time, and thank you all for joining us for this panel today. I hope you enjoyed the discussion and gaining insights into what's going on behind the scenes in your own body. And please remember, as you leave, to grab that promo code, to try Lingo for yourself, and to let us know kind of your experience. And we love hearing your own insights too. So thank you very much for joining us.